Yo, what up? For this video, we are just gonna talk about like Beyond Blue as a game, a little bit of the history, and just overall what I have learned. So let's get straight into it. A little bit of like the history and development of the game is that this game was inspired by the BBC's Blue Planet 2 nature documentary series. The game's main character is Mirai, a deep sea researcher who leads a research team to investigate ocean life such as whales. The game combines educational and narrative aspects. I'm just gonna talk about what I have learned, so yeah, let's dive straight into it. So one of it is the term called fluke. It's basically like the tail of the whale. So whenever you see like a video of a tail just raising its like tail up out of the water, yeah, that's what it's called a fluke. A fluke is sort of like a identification card for whales basically. Based on like the fluke, you will be able to identify certain type of whales. From what the game says is that this is especially useful to scientists because they would be able to sort of identify different flukes for whales, keep track in terms of like conservation and perhaps in their research as well. The next one is we are going to talk about reef sharks. This little fellow over here. The thing about reef sharks is that it is one of the few sharks that doesn't rely on ram ventilation. What does it mean by that? Usually fish sort of count on two types of breathing. One is called buccal pumping, which is an active ventilation that occurs when a fish pumps water through its mouth and over its gills. With buccal pumping is basically that us, like how we have lungs, we can just basically like breathe air in and then we breathe out, right? Simple. There is another type of breathing which is called ram ventilation. It's a simpler process in which a fish swims forward with its mouth open, taking in water that passes over the gills. A drawback to ram ventilation is that the fish has to continuously swim to be able to continue breathing. A lot of sharks breathe this way, as do some large bony fish swimmers like tunas and billfishes. The only way to visualize this is that they don't have to keep continuously swimming for the water to pass through their gills and breathe. They can also just switch like that and just stay motionless and breathe through like how we breathe right now, which is interesting. Another thing that I have learned is called environmental DNA. So basically like us, right? We humans, we would also shed our skin. Do you know how dogs find us? Through the shedding of our skin. The dogs are able to sort of like track that scent. Animals also sort of shed DNA through their feces, through their skin, or even through their hair. That can be applied in the ocean as well. Which I first found out is that by sampling soil, water, snow, or even air, we are able to access this eDNA. Sample carries the genetic code of tens, maybe hundreds of animals containing eDNA can be used to detect endangered species, study the impacts of climate change, alert us to invisible threats. In the game, we are introduced to a scene where there is like mining activity in the ocean and how it would affect communication with other animals, perhaps like dolphins, whales particularly, because they use sound to communicate. So if you have like external noises that sort of disrupts your daily life and you are just hearing like construction noises opposite your house, which is really annoying, yeah, that's how it feels for the animals in there as well. And I think it's even worse because how sound travels through the water and also through the air, it's very different. Instead of bumping air molecules, the sound waves vibrate water molecules, pushing and pulling them back and forth. These ripples then pass through the water, carrying the sound with them. Yeah, the sounds that you can hear in the water is sort of like amplified, that you can say. And I think you can also take like case studies of like how whales communicate through like long distances to like their other cousins. Yeah, I think it's sort of like an awareness that I took of as well, is that wow, I didn't know. It's because it's that they use sound mainly as communication. It's sort of like being disrupted by some like or external noise. It will sometimes like hamper their communications as well with each other. Really interesting thought. Another fact that I found is that hammerhead sharks are known to sunbathe. Alright, it is kind of misleading. It's not like they purposely go to do like sun tanning like how we do to go to the beach. As it says here is that juvenile hammerhead sharks can darken their skin in response to sunlight exposure. They would sort of get exposed to like if they're kept in shallow and sunny waters, their normally light tan skin will become noticeably dark after several weeks. So it is not because of like any aesthetic reasons, but likely serves two beneficial purposes. So one is that it offers photoprotection. With increased melanin absorbs harmful ultraviolet radiation, protecting the sharks from DNA damage and skin cancer. And the other thing is this camouflage, is that the darker skin might help them blend in with the brighter, shallower waters, potentially offering some camouflage from predators. But it is not been observed in adult hammerhead sharks because they spend more time in deeper, open waters where UV radiation is weaker, so the sort of like the harmful UV rays won't actually cause damage to their skin. Oh, and I also learned a term called microbial mats. Think of it as like a bustling city of microbes where each layer has its own specialized residence carrying out vital tasks. I think scientists would make use of like microbial mats. Scientists are able to like do some research on like how each bacteria benefits one another and how each coexists with one another, and it may potentially lead to discoveries in perhaps like medicine. So yeah, I think the best analogy for this is that these microbial mats are like books that scientists are able to observe them and see how each different organism can benefit one another and how they play a role to sort of like shape this sort of like ecosystem. It's really interesting, really interesting. And I also got introduced to Swell sharks. Yep, this guy over right here. If you were to find this underwater, if you were to shine a light on it, and then bam! Look at this. This Kainu renin releases a green glow when exposed to the blue light below the ocean's surface. Yeah, that's interesting. Oh yeah, oh, and I also able to find brine pools. Yeah, brine pools are, you can say, an extremely salty lake that forms on the sea floor that I think when you approach it, you sort of like, you would clearly see that it is different from the surrounding water because I think they are also quite dense, and they are among the most extreme environments on our planet due to the fact that they are devoid of oxygen and have lethal levels of saline. It would quickly kill or paralyze anything that enters through them because of unsafe of their living condition is, even for like normal living things. Even though with like how harsh of the condition of the brine pools, some organisms are able to live in them. This includes like tube worms, who harbors the symbiotic bacteria within their bodies that use chemosynthesis. And you may ask, what is chemosynthetic? You say all of these like organisms, they are able to convert this into that, but they are in an environment with like, isn't it like unsafe for most animals? Well, in order to explain chemosynthetics, you would imagine like tiny chefs cooking amazing meals, right? So chefs, they would like cook with either fire. Chemosynthesis is like a different kitchen altogether, where chemicals like sulfur, methane, or even hydrogen bubbles are the secret ingredient. These organisms create sugars, proteins, and other essential molecules they need to grow and thrive. The bacteria generates food for the worm, while the worm provides them with a safe haven and sulfur compounds that they need for survival. And I think this is sort of what is interesting about the organisms and how scientists perhaps would do some research on them, because imagine what we can do with cryosynthesis, right? We may potentially take various like waste materials and potentially convert them into, well, something that will be more useful. Even in our guts, chemosynthesis that's going on, that with certain types of bacteria in our gut environment, it will sort of like help break down foods that will potentially be converted into energy, right? So yeah, I think this is kind of interesting on that you can see in terms of like in brine pools, that you can see how these organisms apply sort of like chemosynthesis in their living in such harsh environments, and from that I guess scientists, they would learn from them to see how would they do all of these like processes and apply that to like real life applications, which is it's really interesting. It's an interesting concept that I haven't seen before. So yeah. And finally, here are just like some interesting things that I have learned in terms of like how whales survive in the wild. Is that some whale pods is that their pods would mostly consist of like females. As I said that in a whale pod, it would have like grandmothers and daughters always like stay in a group, and while males, they'll sort of like go off onto their solo path. All right, they're like the solo man going, all right, you know what, I'm just gonna get out of this group and just go to the seas and just like basically live their life solo, right? And it's only until like the breeding phase they will perhaps join back the pod and potentially mate. Playing this game, I think it's been really fun because it's very accessible, what I want to call an edutainment game. It is a type of game that offers sort of like education, and it usually offers like a really relaxed kind of gameplay, where the main thing that you use or I used when I was playing this game is that it's just WASD and just some buttons to like do some task, and it's just really easy. This game would be perfect for those not only for those that are interested in the ocean, but I think just in schools, universities, or even just anywhere offering like education, because I think like most of the information that I learned from there is really eye-opening. So especially when this is like exposed to kids, I think it would be like a really fun experience. It's like, you know, they would not only be confined to just, oh, I'm just gonna like watch YouTube videos or just listen from the teacher talking about these things. Like, come on, like even me as a kid, I would get bored. And not to blame like any teachers out there, but for Beyond Blue, it offers like a new way to learn, and while having sort of like a game for people to play, which I mean, it enticed me to play, and I'm able to learn more about the ocean, more awareness. Basically, just makes me excited, and just learning and understanding more about our oceans, and in turn, it will be what they want. I think that is the main thing that I got from the game, is that I'm able to walk away with like so much more knowledge and so much more awareness of our oceans. Is that wow, it's like a really fun experience, and I love it. So yeah, I guess that's the end of my video for today. Thank you for joining me. I have a playlist. Those are like my past live streams, which you can check me out on Twitch and YouTube as well. But yeah, hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.